If you've ever been to Los Angeles, California, then you might have eaten at a popular chain of restaurants called Zankou Chicken. The family-owned business has been a local favorite for decades, but a shocking tragedy nearly closed it all down for good. So today, we're going to take a look at the Zankou Chicken murders. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel. After that, please leave a comment and let us know what other dark food stories you would like to hear about. Okay, time for an extra large helping of true crime with a side of chicken. The story of Zankou Chicken starts in Beirut in 1962. In the beginning, it was just called Zankou, named after a river in Armenia. The chicken part wouldn't come until later. The restaurant was founded by an Armenian man named Varkas Iskandarian, who opened the first location in a neighborhood called Borj Hamoud, and ran the place along with his wife, Margaret Iskandarian, and the rest of his family. The original Zankou only served their trademark chicken with garlic paste, but that garlic paste was damn good.
The sauce is what keeps you coming back.
And the restaurant was highly successful. In the 1980s, however, Lebanon was consumed by a civil war. So despite their success, the family picked up and fled to Los Angeles, California. Despite the fact that the restaurant business had been very good to them, the Iskandarians wanted no part of it after settling in their new homeland. They tried out the dry cleaning business, but the chemicals made Varkas' oldest son, Mardiros, sick. They then considered selling men's suits, but after exploring the economics, they decided it wasn't practical. Meanwhile, Mardiros began to notice LA came up a bit short when it came to restaurants that catered to the tastes of Middle Eastern immigrants. Because of the Civil War, waves of Lebanese and Armenian refugees were coming to the US, and Mardiros saw an opportunity. He pitched opening up a Zankou in Los Angeles, but his parents hated the idea.
I'll handle it.
No, really, they genuinely hated it. His mother cried and his father threatened to uproot the family and move back to the Middle East. But Mardiros was determined, so they relented. And in 1984, he opened up the first American location of Zankou Chicken at the corner of Sunset Boulevard and Normandy Avenue, which is located in the Little Armenia section of East Hollywood. That first location was a huge hit with East Hollywoodians, and word began to spread about Zankou's incredibly tender chicken and that amazing garlic paste. Slowly, the menu began to expand. The Little Armenia location dug deeper into Armenian, Mediterranean, and Middle Eastern culinary traditions and added various plates and pita wraps, as well as shish kebabs, falafel, salads, bowls, and Tony Stark's favorite, shawarma.
You ever tried shawarma?
Within no time at all, that single location was making over $1 million a year in profit. So in 1991, Mardiros decided it was time to turn Zankou Chicken into a chain of restaurants. However, the rest of his family was less excited. They ultimately decided that the original Little Armenia location would remain the property of Mardiros' parents and sisters, while Mardiros would get ownership of the new locations. The business expanded rapidly. A second Zankou opened up in Glendale, then a third in Van Nuys, a fourth in Anaheim, and a fifth in Pasadena. But the success was overshadowed by the death of its original founder, Varkas Iskandarian, who passed away just a year later in 1992. Sadly, it wouldn't be the biggest tragedy the family would face. The Iskandarian family was successful in their business, but that luck didn't translate to other areas of their lives. Back in Beirut, Mardiros had been implicated in an infamous jewelry store robbery that ended up with the slaying of the beloved son of one of the city's richest families. Mardiros unwittingly let one of the robbers stash the stolen jewels in his apartment and would later have to testify against them in open court. His testimony sent them to prison, and for the rest of his life, he would carry 2 guns with him wherever he went, in case they tried to get revenge. Mardiros and his wife Rita also had 4 children, Dekran, Steve, Ara, and Varkas, and they all had problems of their own. Dekran had been busted cheating on a law school entrance exam, Varkas and Ara struggled with substance abuse, and in January of 2000, Mardiros' son, Steve, was arrested and charged with 2 counts of attempted murder. He faced life in prison, but thanks to a mistake by the prosecutor, the proceeding ended in a mistrial. Steve was allowed to plead guilty to a lesser crime that only carried a year-long sentence, during which he was allowed to continue working at his job. Then in 2001, Mardiros was diagnosed with terminal cancer. By that point, it was too late for chemotherapy to make much of a difference, so he broke the news to his family.
There's something I need to tell you guys.
Who were absolutely shocked. But they were equally shocked when he revealed he would be turning his business over to his sons, a decision Mardiros' mother Margaret did not take well.
Why?
According to the family, she was so stunned she didn't even ask what kind of cancer Mardiros had. In the subsequent days and weeks, Margaret became increasingly cold to her son. Even as Mardiros' hair began to fall out and his weight began to drop precipitously, his mother showed no interest in his health or his treatments. According to Rita, the two didn't speak a single word over the following year. After a fire damaged their home, Margaret moved out and took up residence with Mardiros' sister, Zovig. Despite previously being very close, Zovig and her sons had cut off all contact with Mardiros. Meanwhile, his treatments began to affect his brain and his thoughts, which grew increasingly paranoid about what would happen to his family when he was gone. On January 14, 2003, Mardiros, then 56 years old, wasn't in great shape. In fact, he actually hadn't left his home in months, which is why Rita was so surprised to see him emerge from his bedroom wearing a white silk suit he hadn't worn in decades. According to Rita, he looked beautiful. As he had done for years, when Mardiros departed, he had his 9mm handgun tucked into his waistband and a .38 caliber revolver in his pocket. Rita was worried he was too weak to travel outside, but he assured her he was feeling much better and that he was merely headed to Zankou Chicken to chat with an old friend. Then he jumped into one of his sports cars and sped away. Mardiros didn't go to Zankou Chicken, and he never intended to. Instead, he drove to the home of his mother and his sister, located on the 3400 block of Ayers Canyon Way in Glendale. Mardiros had called earlier and arranged to meet them to discuss the state of both the family and the family business. According to a housekeeper, Mardiros arrived wearing a brown jacket and gray pants. Whether he changed his clothes after leaving the house or whether his wife misremembered what he was wearing when he left is unclear. He sat down with his sister at the dining room table, and according to witnesses, they chatted peacefully for just under an hour while waiting for their mother to return. When she finally arrived, the housekeeper left the three to talk. According to reports, an argument then broke out, and about 5 minutes later, Mardiros reached into his waistband, pulled out his gun, and shot his sister. His mother attempted to flee to the front door, but he shot her several times as well. At that point, Mardiros noticed his 23-year-old nephew, Hagop, with whom he had once been very close, watching from the top of the stairs. Then Mardiros sat down on the couch, raised his weapon, and took his own life. While police never figured out exactly what motivated Mardiros to commit these terrible crimes, they downplayed the idea that the killings were solely related to the family business and classified it as an instance of domestic violence. Hagop and his brother Margik inherited the original Little Armenia location of Zankou Chicken, while Rita and her sons took over the locations that had been owned by Mardiros. Rita eventually sued to take sole control of the Zankou Chicken trademark, but her bid was shot down by the California Court of Appeals in 2006. Since then, the two factions, which remain at odds, have both expanded the chain. Today there are 12 Zankou Chicken locations scattered around California in places like West Los Angeles, Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena, Toluca Lake, Anaheim, Montebello, and Huntington Beach. That being said, the unusual ownership situation has proven to be an obstacle to larger expansions, and is one of the main reasons why Mardiros' dream of Zankou locations coast to coast still remains unrealized. Today, more than 20 years after the tragedy, Zankou Chicken remains incredibly popular among diners, influencers, and celebrities. Alt-rocker Beck, for example, name-checked the franchise in his 1999 song Deborah, saying, "Like a fruit that's ripe for a pickin', I wouldn't do you like that, Zankou Chicken." It's also a favorite of Larry David. So much so that the fictional Palestinian restaurant, Alaba's Original Best Chicken on Curb Your Enthusiasm, said to be so good that it could end the rift in the Middle East, was based directly on Zankou.
What these people should do is send their chicken over to Israel
for the peace process.
And rapper Childish Gambino, aka actor Donald Glover, shot the music video for his 2014 song Sober at the original Los Angeles location of Zankou in Little Armenia. Not bad for a humble neighborhood restaurant that started with a single menu item. So, what do you think? Had you heard of the Zankou Chicken murders? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other Weird History Food videos.